This movie came out at a time in my life when I began to have aspirations of a career in the industry around probably the middle of high school. And this is probably one of the 5 or 6 films that I can point to that really lit a fire in me where I wanted to tell stories on screen. And I've seen this movie many times, but every time I see it, I find something I've never caught before.
Mhm.
In fact, there's a tiny line of dialogue that Robin Williams utters that I found so funny this screening that I've never picked up before. So I have so much praise for this film. And I'll start with a couple of things here. The casting, number one, Robin
Mhm.
Williams. I like him as a performer, and I think he's an excellent actor, but I've always felt that his movies, especially they've always had I've had a hard time. I think they have a hard time capturing his energy
Mhm.
into a realistic character. He's often ping-ponging between roles in which he's playing a character that can cut loose with manic energy.
Mhm.
And a lot of those I'm really not into. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, there are the films in which he's playing it very straight. And I think he's very good in those films, but either the character is thinly written or the film is lacking in other ways.
I feel like you're just talking about 1 Hour Photo here.
No, I think a lot of them, like Insomnia, 1 Hour Photo, I like, but I think there's so many problems in the movies that he is in these serious roles. But sometimes he's playing in a movie where his character is somewhere in the middle, playing someone who exists in the real world, but still has that Robin Williams exuberance.
Mhm.
This is the most fertile ground, I think, for him to be a great performer in a movie like Good Will Hunting, Dead
Mhm.
Poet Society, Good
Dead
Morning,
Poet Society.
Good Morning Vietnam, and there
Mhm.
are many more. But of all of these, I feel like Fisher King is his greatest performance, balancing these two worlds. That's at
What
Mhm.
least
about the
my opinion.
what about the Birdcage?
Birdcage, yeah, very good as well. The rest of the
Birdcage
cast
fucks.
is phenomenal as well. I love Jeff Bridges in this. He's honestly probably my top 2 or 3 favorite actors right now of all. Probably going back because I think of Jeff Bridges as someone that I have
Starman on
loved my
Carpenter.
whole life. Going back to Tron, going back to because I think Tron came out in '82
Starman.
and I was 8 years old. This was like my early
King
years.
Kong.
I didn't
Yeah.
catch up with King Kong much later, but when Jeff Bridges eventually does pass, it's going to be one of the hardest days of my life because he's an actor that has
Yeah.
been somebody who I've loved his movies every decade that I've
Mhm.
been alive and every decade he has been performing.
Mhm.
And this is one of the pillars of the movies that I love him in.
Nathan, I did a little Jeff Bridges rewatch this week, and I did a few of his movies,
mm,
including introducing my partner to The Big Lebowski,
mm,
and it was,
mm.
such a great time.
The
I
Big
also,
Lebowski, True Grit. Sorry, didn't
yeah,
want to interrupt
Oh,
that.
I
Yeah.
love the True Grit remake.
yeah.
Oh my
True
god, love it
Grit.
so much.
Yeah.
I also want to I have to give mad props to Mercedes Rule
Mhm.
as Anne in this. You don't see women portrayed in movies like this.
Right.
It
Mhm.
was such a breath of fresh air. She's smart, perceptive,
Mhm.
strong-willed, but also sympathetic to Jack's flaws. She's motherly. Also,
Mhm.
I love
Yeah.
her philosophy and perspective on men and women's relationships. And it's so rare for a girlfriend to be fleshed out like this in a
Mhm.
movie. Another thing I found fascinating, and I'll leave things off shortly. Gilliam heavily is directing this film. It's the most directed movie I think there is out there, possibly. I don't think I've seen this many Dutch angles, low angles, high angles, wide angles in a film ever. He's reaching into his toolbox, pulling out every trick in the book to keep the audience off balance.
Mhm.
There's
When
almost
Jeff Bridges momentarily breaks the fourth wall in the
Mhm.
beginning, like half a second. Oh,
there's almost no shots in this entire film that adhere to conventional framing or and I really love that. But I suppose if you're not into the style, this can wear very thin after a while. And just finally, my only knock in this film, it's not really a knock. I love the story. I love the A plot regarding Jack's redemption.
Mhm.
The movie, I think, is trying to make a commentary on mental illness, trauma, and especially homelessness. And I think it's very inventive how it's dealing with these topics, but it's also very superficial and scattershot, especially the homelessness topic,
Mhm.
which is coming up several times in this film. We
Little
can
rose
talk about
tinted.
Yeah, we can talk about that more in our discussion. But
Mhm.
overall, this is an excellent film. This is probably in my top 10 of all time.
Mhm.
Uh, I think it's Terry Gilliam's best movie. So yeah, this is a 5.